Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and I recently did a one of those 22 books for 2022 type of videos where I picked 22 books that I vaguely am going to try to be in my TBR, I guess, for the whole year. And it was fairly well received, and in my community posts and stuff, it was requested to do a 22 recommendations video for 2022, and here we are. And that's probably about as much intro as I'm going to do because, like I said, with 22 books in a video, it's just with me. I'm just gonna blather on about everything, and it's gonna be like half an hour, 45 minutes longer. So we're just gonna get started and try to keep it under 20 minutes or something like that. So let's go ahead and get started. I broke it up again into roughly 11 history-ish books and 11 nature-ish books. So let's go ahead and get started with the history ones. Alright, first up we have one of my favorite history books of all time. It's kind of niche, but it's The First Punic War by J.F. Lazenby. I have a Punic War / Hannibal collection, I guess bookshelf that I'm going to be building and stuff. Well, I mean, it's just going to go on the bookshelves I'm building. But anyways, I really enjoy reading about the Punic Wars, and the first one totally gets overshadowed by the second one, because the second one's the one, Hannibal crosses the Alps with his elephants and everything like that, Whereas the first Punic War is really goofy for a Roman army where they have to learn to build a navy and beat Carthage at sea, and it's fought all over Sicily and everything. But this was what at the time when I read this, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was the only English book on the first Punic War that actually dealt with it as the primary topic. Just I don't know, it just really sparked my interest in Roman history. When I read a brief mention about the First Punic War, so I read more about it, and that's kind of where I got really interested in Roman history. So that's why I'm recommended it. Next up, we have a medieval history, a medieval biography. We got The Greatest Knight by Thomas Asbridge. Let's see, The Remarkable Life of William Marshall, the power behind 5 English thrones. I remember reading this one. I think I've done a individual book review of this one a long time ago. Just really fascinating. It's a good kind of you get really good vignettes of medieval life, medieval tourneys and stuff, rather than just purely the political narrative. William Marshall was heavily involved with all that stuff, so if you're really interested in the High Middle Ages, definitely give this one a try. Like I said, behind 5 English thrones, you got Richard the Lionheart, his brother John, and let's see, is it Edward the Second? I don't know. That was probably a flop, but anyways, I remember it was really good. Definitely go check it out if you're into medieval history. Alright, next up is a Greek history book on my favorite polis of the ancient Greek world, and it's Thebes, the Forgotten City of Ancient Greece by Paul Cartledge. Love Thebes. Gets really bad rep because, they Medized when the Persians came. Granted, they were kind of left pretty far, I guess not super far north, but north enough where, they weren't protected by, the hot gates or the proposed kind of Corinthian defensive line and stuff like that. So Thebes really didn't have a whole lot of choice in the matter, and they Medized, and they get a bad rep. Though Epaminondas and Pelopidas overthrowing sort of Spartan dominance in the 4th century BCE, and kind of that 15-year Theban hegemony of the Greek world. Probably my favorite period in ancient Greek history, but definitely check it out for a real forgotten city of ancient Greek history. Next up is a dual biography that I reviewed, and I think actually I reviewed Thebes as well, but I reviewed this one I think 2 years ago. Philip and Alexander, Kings and Conquerors by Adrian Goldsworthy. Adrian Goldsworthy is one of the top tier kind of gold standard Roman history authors, and what I really enjoyed about this one is Philip II of Macedon, who really laid most of the groundwork for Alexander, his son Alexander, to kind of conquer Persia and whatnot. He gets actually a pretty comprehensive treatment in the book. I want to say maybe not first half, but I think about, a third to 2/5 of the book or so is dealing primarily with Philip. So definitely enjoyed this one. It's kind of a cool concept too, with kind of the father-son dual biography thing going on. Highly recommend this one as well. And now we're going back to medieval history. Dan Jones is a pretty prolific, popular medieval historian. I think I've read 2 of his works so far, and this was the first one I read. Summer of Blood, England's First Revolution. And this is on one of my favorite medieval history topics, which is the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. And like I said, it's just a really good and kind of popular history. I think it's the first book I read on the topic that was just purely dedicated to it. Now I think I've got almost like a 5 books on the Peasants' Revolt. But like I said, it's one of my favorite topics in medieval history, and if you're kind of like that idea as well, this would definitely be a good place to kind of jump in and get started with that. Alright, and next one is not actually a book, but it's just a plug for my Etsy shop for, you know, some shameless self-promotion. It's doing actually pretty good, so I want to keep the momentum going, but I got lots of different kind of like philosophy and nature and Viking like plaques and signs and stuff. We're going to be launching all of them in 8 colors, I think. I want to say this, because it's kind of like dark gray, a lighter gray, and 6 other colors as well. Hopefully, you know, by like kind of the middle of February, stuff like that. But even if you don't buy anything, definitely give the shop like a like some items, favorite the shop, all that kind of stuff. It helps me in the algorithm, everything like that. But moving on, we have one of my favorite biographies of all time, and it's The Poison King, Rome's Deadliest Enemy, The Life and Legend of Mithridates by Adrienne Mayer. I recently read her book, I can't remember, Greek Fire and Scorpion Bombs. She writes a whole lot on like kind of classical history, but she picks really cool niche subjects. I think she has another one on like fossil hunters from the classical world, and I think the Amazons and things like that. But Mithridates of Pontus, you know, he was maybe not necessarily the best tactician, the best strategist or whatever, but, you know, he was trying to kind of counterbalance the Roman juggernaut that was kind of taking over the entire Mediterranean world. I mean, he fought Lucullus, he fought Sulla, he fought Pompey in most, like, maybe not most of the time. I mean, he won quite a few victories, he lost a few times, but he always found, like, a way to kind of get back up, you know, until the last time. But anyways, like I said, just, you know, giving his all, just, you know, trying to stop the Roman, like, he saw, anyways. I'm just getting over I'm just dragging on that whole point, but he's got a lot of other cool stuff as well. The Mithridatic elixir. He used to poison himself all the time to kind of build up immunity to different toxins and poisons, because he was kind of like paranoid about that. And the Mithridatic elixir was like all the way up through the Middle Ages was sort of like some weird concoction that people were like trying to perfect, so that would make you like immune to becoming basically assassinated by poisons and stuff. But in a way, he was actually a really cool progressive ruler. Like, he spoke about, he was a polyglot with like, you know, a dozen languages and stuff, because his sort of empire just had a whole bunch of different cultures and people, things like that. But definitely give this a read if you're into classical history. Kind of gives you a nice kind of frame of reference away from, you know, the Greeks or Romans, depending on like what time period you're reading about. Okay, now we're moving on to one of the only modernist history books that I am recommending. Not that there's not good, you know, modern histories, but The Naturalist, Theodore Roosevelt, A Lifetime of Exploration and the Triumph of American Natural History by Darren Lund. And I really enjoy reading about Theodore Roosevelt for a bunch of different reasons, but primarily because he's sort of the president that kind of got, you know, like natural history, you know, the natural world should be kind of preserved for its own sake. He really was almost kind of like a self-trained like field scientist in a way. Just reading about like some of his journals and things, like learning all the different bird species and all the bird song and stuff like that. Just when he was a kid, he helped start a museum when he was literally like, you know, like, I remember he was like 12 or whatever. He's collecting different specimens of different things. Eventually gets donated to, I think, the Smithsonian at the time. But anyways, highly recommended if you're into like kind of the Gilded Age of America. A lot of this book kind of deals with his not just his presidency, which helped start like a lot of different like preserves and reserves and things like that, which is really cool. But also like his kind of, you know, like safaris and kind of, I guess, scientific safaris, I guess is what you'd call it, you know, in the Amazon and in Africa and stuff after his presidency. All right, next up we got, I think, 3 more history books. We got Mastering the West, Rome and Carthage at War by Dexter Hoyos. And I think this is, like I said earlier, I have a whole like Punic War book, like just shelf of books essentially. I think this is my favorite kind of one that kind of just generally goes over all of the Punic War. So there's quite a few other good ones. Like for example, Adrian Goldsworthy also has one, though it's under like 2. I think it was just the Punic Wars, and then there's another one. It got like rebranded as like a different title. But anyways, this one I think came out 4 or 5 years ago. Let's see, what do we have here? 2015. So it's actually fair. It's pretty recent. And out of like the 4 or 5 just general overview of Punic War books, dealing with like kind of all of them, this was my favorite one out of the bunch, so that's why I'm recommending this one. And then Dexter Hoyos is essentially like kind of the, I guess, the world scholar on the Punic Wars, if that makes sense. Like, he is like the guy if you have a Punic War question. Next up is kind of going to be definitely it's going to be a classic of Roman history, and it's SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard. I remember when this came out, it was like kind of the big deal, and it wasn't actually, I think I reviewed this one as well when I first started BookTube, and it's not really my favorite Roman history, but I can definitely see why why it's going to be, or why it's considered to be like kind of the new kind of just classic standard work, if you're getting into studying Roman history and stuff, just because of its like readability and things like that, and it does cover like all the bases in just kind of like a really nice, good manner. So I definitely would recommend others to read it as well. And one more history book. It's my favorite book on World War I, and it covers pretty much the entire war. And it's A World Undone: The Story of the Great War, 1914 to 1918 by G.J. Meyer. And I want to say I did a review of this one as well. So pretty much all the books I really liked when I started BookTube the first like 2 or 3 years. I did like individual reviews, and it's starting to bring that back. My last individual book review was kind of goofy because I was walking in a snowstorm to do it. But anyways, this is definitely the best overview of World War I if you want just like a 1-volume work covering the entire thing, all facets, like in the home front, the eastern front, the western front, everything like that. You're gonna get it. It is a pretty chunky book. I want to say it's like 700 something pages, but very readable, very legible. Just like going through it, highly recommended if you want to like kind of dip. I guess dip. It wouldn't be really dipping your toes, but if you really want to get into the story of the Great War. All right, I think those are the history books. Let's go on to the nature books. All right, the first one was like, I remember buying it for like $1. I think it was like $1.50 or something. I was like, I don't read fishing books or whatever, but it's A Naturalist Goes Fishing by James McClintock. But I'm so glad I picked it up, partly just because like this like beautiful rainbow trout painting on the cover and stuff. But I don't know, it's literally like chef's kiss delicious. It's a perfect blend of fishing stories with like the hard scientific biology with kind of conservation ecology all mixed together. In like each chapter he kind of goes to a different location where he's actually a hardcore Antarctic polar scientist he has another book called Lost Antarctica, and he spends field seasons in Antarctica doing field research and whatever, but he also loves fishing, so he also that's why he kind of came up with this book. But just, I don't know, if you like anything about fishing or kind of like learning about fish and kind of like how they fit into like kind of like their ecosystems and stuff, this is a great book to do that. Alright, next up is a bird book, and it's The Thing with Feathers, The Surprising Lives of Birds and What They Reveal About Being Human. This is one of the first, I guess, popular science books on birds that I read, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think he highlights about 10 birds or a dozen birds or so during the book. Let's see. I probably should count it before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Anyways, dealing with all kinds of different things, such as, how do they, migrate and like kind of learn to like locate their surroundings, being able to decipher puzzles, memory with like kind of their food caches and stuff like that. Super readable, just highly enjoyed it. Definitely recommend to anyone who wants to learn more about, bird brains, essentially. Alright, next up is The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, A New History of the Lost World by Steve Brissett. And this is pretty much the gold standard work on dinosaurs right now, from what I can tell. Just as the Washington Post put there, a masterpiece. Definitely is. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't think I've really seen any real negative reviews of the book. If you want to learn about dinosaurs in like a modern, up-to-date way, because he kind of deals with the whole thing with feathers and stuff. I remember, like, at the time, not being on the fence, probably isn't the right way to put it. I had heard about it, and I was like, yeah, okay, but, just didn't really understand what was going on. But the way Steve Brissett kind of brings it up, kind of explains the whole, like, kind of reasoning behind it. Maybe reasoning behind it isn't the right word either, but like kind of all the different reasons feathers kind of evolved and stuff, and how primarily it was, it wasn't actually for flies, more for like heat regulation, things like that probably. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely read this if you're into dinosaurs and want to learn more about them. Alright, next up it's January, and I live in northern Maine, and I think yesterday when I looked at the weather forecast, each of the 10 days in the forecast had a low below 0. But I still like the outdoors, everything like that. So even though it's super brutally cold, It's interesting to learn, how do all these other animals like survive out in the wilderness and stuff. We got like little, black-capped chickadees. You got foxes, you got squirrels, you got everything. How are they all doing? How are all the insects surviving in the wintertime when it's below zero for 2 weeks in a row? And Baron Heinrich, who is like one of my favorite nature writers because he does a lot of his kind of anecdotal experiments and stuff in a cabin in the Maine woods, kind of where I live, just a couple hundred miles away, essentially. He literally does his own kind of like research and stuff just, around his home and stuff. He kind of deals with exactly, what that question, how do all these animals survive in, just, sub-freezing temperatures for, 3 or 4 months at a time. And you definitely learn a lot. It's a little sciencey at some points, but, like I said, this is a popular science book, so anyone can like pick it up and read it and learn a lot. And like I said, just learning about how do beehives, how do they all stay, warm long enough, everything like that, pretty cool. I learned a lot from it, so I recommend it too if you're living in an area where it's like super cold, like where I am. All right, next up is a book I think everyone needs to read, The Story of More, How We Got to Climate Change and Where to Go From Here by Hope Jahren. I do have Lab Girl. I haven't read it yet. I'm saving that one for like a rainy day because I know it's super good and everyone raves about it. But this is kind of like a down-to-earth, just sort of, here's a list of pretty much all the problems we're causing, like, energy consumption, over agricultural land usage and things like that, overfishing, and kind of some basic, this is what's going on. These are the friggin' numbers. What are we gonna do about it? Here's like some potential ideas. Sometimes it's, the ideas really aren't, there's not a whole lot of easy solutions, but she basically lays it out. And it's so like down to earth, and she's like, when you read it, it's like, you're literally just having like a conversation. So it's not like hostile or anything like that. And this is the book that I recommend to others who are like climate change deniers or don't believe in global warming, all that kind of stuff. This is the one I kind of I've only had, I think, one person read it because I just don't have good luck persuading people to read books. But definitely check this one out. Thoroughly recommend. This is like one of my top, I guess this is probably like my top, like climate change book, I guess, if that makes sense, of all time, to like kind of like reference or learn from and kind of explain things to people. And if that's my favorite, specifically climate changey book, this is my favorite nature book of all time. In Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And this is my, okay, just as a reference, this is like I think this is the only book I have where I had 2 copies of. I have the plain paperback one right here, that I got the first time. And then after reading it, I'm like, I'm just like, it's just like a revelation, I guess. I don't know. Maybe not a revelation, probably not the word. I don't know. Like I said, you reflect on it, and I'm just like, yeah, this is something special. This is like the book I recommend in like half my videos. Pretty much everyone I meet. I don't think I've ever had anyone freaking read it, but, like I said, it's the perfect blend, like, as the subtitle says, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge. She takes Eastern, I guess, maybe Eastern what? Like, Native American knowledge and, like, hardcore Western science, and she blends them together. It is like, no, it's not like, it's not one or the other. It's like, combine with and, they work together. Just super good. The vignettes are so awesome. Her, like, kind of memoir stuff in there is super good. Her just metaphors and stories and stuff, tremendous. I can't recommend enough. I'm totally butchering, like, that review like I do every time, but I do plan on doing probably a deep dive of this book again. And actually, like, I don't note take in my books, but since I got 2 copies, I think I will, like, have both copies down at my desk or something, and I'm gonna, like, annotate this one maybe. Something like that. We'll see. We'll see what happens, but if that's the takeaway of this video, that's the book I want you to actually read out of these 22 books. If you're only picking one, this is the one to pick. Next up, I know I should have saved that one for like either the first one or the last one, but I just like kind of threw them in a pile. But next up we have Poached, Inside the Dark World of Wildlife Trafficking by Rachel Love Newer. And this one is a really cool kind of investigative journalism book, dealing with all the kind of like black market illegal animal trade that goes on. At first, I thought it was just going to be kind of like, poaching, hunting and that sort of thing. But she actually deals a lot with like, the animal illegal, like kind of black market, like pet trafficking, animals that are hunted for like, East Asian, like Chinese and Vietnamese, like medicine and stuff, like pangolins, stuff like that. The one that touches me, because like I said, I live in northern Maine, we have black bears and stuff, but there are like, sun bears and I can't remember if it's moon bears or sun bears, and some other kinds like Asian bears and stuff that are like kind of corralled, and they get put in these like terrible cages and stuff for like bear bile extraction, which is just for like, some doofy medicine that doesn't actually do anything. I learned a lot about that one. That one actually like bothered me the most, just because I like I said, I like bears and stuff, because we have them. I literally have a photograph of a bear lounging on my like deck, just eating the bird seed and stuff. But anyways, just highly recommended. Like I said, deals with all aspects of kind of like illegal animal activities. So you probably read it, you probably will get angry, but that's probably a good thing if you do. Next up, we have The Nature Fix by Florence Williams, Why Nature Makes Us Happier, Healthier, and More Creative. It actually really wasn't my favorite book per se, but it's one of those books sometimes where like when after like a gloom and doom book of like Poached, I kind of, I already know the premise of the book. It's like, being outside, being out in nature, is actually good for your health and your mind and stuff. And I already believe that, so I'm going to read a book where it just like reinforces that opinion. It just makes me go, get a nice echo chamber type book. Like I said, it really wasn't like actually my favorite, like kind of, I want to say, not really necessarily writing style, but how she kind of inserts herself into a lot of the studies and stuff. I don't know, I kind of like, for things like this where it wasn't like super necessary, it's kind of good to keep some of the science like separate, so it's not all anecdotal per se. But definitely highly recommended. Like I said, for a lot of people, kind of, this is starting to actually gain a lot of like, credence, even in the Western world stuff. As well, so that's kind of a good thing. Anytime nature gets more of like exposure and appreciation, that's a good thing. Next up, we have another investigative journalism book. I remember reading this one like several years ago, and I was like, this is like one of the first like nature journalism books that I read. And it's The Dragon Behind the Glass: A True Story of Power, Obsession, and the World's Most Coveted Fish by Emily Boyd. This is all about the illegal sort of arowana fish trade, where some of these fish are literally selling for tens and 20, 30. I'm probably just blowing smoke right now, but I want to say it was like some of the fish were like in the $70,000 and $80,000 range for like a single fish taken from the wild. One of these like arowana, like lucky fish and stuff. People literally get murdered like in like this illegal fish trade and stuff because they're so valuable. And just kind of like open my eyes with how far people are going to kind of extract just coveted things from the wild and stuff. I mean you hear about poachers taking like ivory and things like that, but anytime anything becomes rare or scarce, like a monetary value is sort of attached to it, which is like just kind of depressing and stuff. But this was, like I said, this was kind of a cool kind of journalism take on it. Definitely recommend for anyone that's kind of like interested in like, if you're interested in Poached, definitely give this one a look as well. A little bit more narrowed down onto like kind of just the illegal black market fish trade. And like I said, just kind of weird, like learning all about this huge network of just fish industry, I guess, and how much money is actually just going around just for like aquarium fish and things like that. All right, I think I got 2 books left. First up out of the 2, so 21st up. A Life on Our Planet, My Witness Statement, A Vision for the Future by David Attenborough. This is kind of is like accompanies the documentary that came out like 2 years ago, I believe it was. And this is sort of just like a reflection on, he talks about, all the stuff he's been able to see in the world and stuff, and how, he's 90 at the time. I think he was 93, and I think he's 95, 96 now. All the stuff that's changed, over 6, 7, 8 decades that he's been doing stuff, or like, being able to see, like, see the world and things like that. So it's got a lot of vignettes, memoir stuff. About the first half of the book or so is like that, but a lot of the hard science is also what I really liked is each chapter, as he's getting older, he kind of imparts like the world population, how much deforestation has gone on, and like kind of the carbon in the atmosphere. As he gets older, all these things are increasing, things like that. So definitely highly recommend it. If you like David Attenborough, if you like any of his documentaries, definitely give this one a look. And for real, and lastly, we have Carl Safina's Voyage of the Turtle in Pursuit of the Earth's Last Dinosaur. And this is the first book I read by Carl Safina, and because of that, I looked him up after reading because I really enjoyed. It's just like, a real deep dive of mostly leatherback sea turtles. So he kind of deals with some of the other species as well, such as like the Ridley Scott turtles and stuff. But this made me actually want to like look him up, and he's the real deal. Like he was a professor, teacher of ecology and stuff like that. Does a lot of kind of like actual hands-on field research. He goes out in the field, do research, but also out in the field just to like learn about how other people are doing things. Like, for example, there's a big vignette in this book where he kind of goes with sword fishermen and talking about like kind of the hooks they're using and things like that, and why they're using certain things a certain way. But he also, like I said, he's the real deal because he literally helps legislate and draft, like international like treaties and like laws and stuff on like fishing. And he talks about, we can't, he's on the side of the fishermen still, and like tries to help them, create different hooks and things that, will help them catch fish, but also prevent, bycatch with like sea turtles and things like that. And because of that, I wanted to read all his books. Definitely recommend that one. But he's got a whole slew of books. Just finished Eye of the Albatross like last week, and this is all about a deep dive of different albatrosses and stuff. But he also has a lot of vignettes as well, such as when he did a cod fisheries expedition type thing out in the Bering Sea and whatever. That's a big part of the book as well. But like I said, I want to read all of his books now because, like I said, he's the blend of real life, real grit. This is the way things are, and we can't just like not have fishermen. Like that's not like that's just some pipe dream that doesn't make any sense. So he literally is out in the trenches with like politicians and like legislative bodies and stuff, trying to draft like treaties, laws, things like that. But he's also doing like research and just trying to like spread conservation and things like that. Because of that, I want to read all of his books. I might be doing a buddy read of one of his newest book, Becoming Wild, with Brandon's Bookshelf, hopefully in the month of February coming up. But anyways, that is the 22 books. I feel like I've gone over 20 minutes, that's for sure. Let me know if any of these 22 books look interesting to you, and if you were going to read one of these recommendations during 2022, which one would it be and why? Love to hear your reasonings behind that stuff. Definitely check out my Twitter, Instagram, Etsy shop, everything like that. Thank you so much for watching, and whatever you decide to read for 2022, read victoriously.